This series of videos is on Node.js's HTTP package. HTTP, or Hypertext Transfer Protocol, is a widely used application layer protocol that forms the basis of the World Wide Web. It is used to transport various types of documents and media. Node.js has two packages that deal with HTTP. The standard HTTP package, which we'll be looking at in this series of videos. And it also has the HTTPS library, which adds transport layer security. We could use the HTTPS server. This would require us to set up certificates, which adds a lot of complexity to an otherwise simple demo, so we will avoid it. To set up the HTTP server, we need to include the HTTP package, so we will use require HTTP. We will call http.createServer to create a server object. The HTTP server extends the TCP server, so it has all the previous events and methods that we discussed, including server.listen. HTTP servers have an additional event called requests. The callback to this event is supplied two parameters: request, which represents the request received, and response, which represents a stream for us to communicate back on. Request is of type incoming message, which actually extends readable stream, and response is of type server response, which extends stream, but we can treat it as a writable stream. Both of these objects are wrapper classes on top of streams and include additional components, including the URL, the IP address, and header information. We can interface with the user's HTTP request by looking at the request objects. In this example, when we receive a new request from a client, we print out new request from followed by the client's IP address, for followed by the client's requested URL. When we want to send data back, we must respond using the response objects. This is typically done in three parts. First, we need to send the header. This is done through the res.writeHead method and requires three components, the last two which are optional. The first one is the status code, which is a 3-digit number representing a general category of responses. Messages in the 200 range are successful. Messages in the 300 range are redirects. Messages in the 400 range are client errors. And messages in the 500 range are server errors. The second message is the status message, which provides more information. In this example, the response the browser receives should be interpreted as text/HTML. The second method, res.write, is used to transmit data. And finally, res.end closes the connection. It is also possible to send data using only res.end, but in scenarios where data is ready at different times, it might be more efficient to use multiple res.writes before finally terminating the connection with res.end. Just like TCP servers, HTTP servers must also listen on a port. The default port for HTTP servers is port 80, but in this example we will use port 3000. We've also set up an additional event listener for the listening events, which will fire when the server is up and running. Next, let's run this demo. The server is now up and running, and it's listening on port 3000. I'm going to open the browser up and navigate to localhost 3000. In my terminal, I receive a new request from a specified IP address for the resource root. In the browser, I receive back the message "Hello World," represented as HTML. If I wanted to see the raw text, I can change the content type to text/plain. Res.writeHead is used to tell the client how to interpret the message. In fact, it's possible to send a type that doesn't match the description of the data, and the browser will try to render it as specified. So then over here it says the image localhost 3000 cannot be displayed because it contains errors, which makes sense because this is not image data. If the client requests a different URL, we can look at the request object to get more information, specifically the request.url property. In this example, any URL will get the same hello world message, but on the server we can see what the client is requesting. Using conditional statements, we can send different messages to the clients depending on the URL. This is typically referred to as routing.